for allowing me to be here to showcase what I have to offer and help you guys out, because I was a newbie at one time, and it's always good to get the right information that's honest and accurate. So, without further ado, I'm Josh Fromm from Cut Above Perfection Sharpening. I'm a Chicago company out of Chicago, Illinois, and I've been sharpening for 10 years now. I started in 2004. Kind of got into this industry by accident, and I think it was fate actually. At the time, my wife was a licensed nail technician, and we were calling around trying to see if anyone could sharpen her cuticle nippers. And at that time, we couldn't find anybody to service her cuticle nippers. And so, me being a good husband, I'm like, well, honey, I could sharpen your nippers. I got a. And that's why it's called screwing around with Josh. How apropos.
That's right.
There you go. That's worth the DVD price alone.
Going around. Well,
so hopefully next year I'll get funniest presentation or something like that. So anyways, I thought maybe I could handle it. I got a Dremel that year, and I tried to Dremel her cuticle nippers, and boy, did I get humbled real quick, because when she went to use them, they were worse than ever. And I was looking pretty embarrassed. And so because of that, I said, okay, well, let's figure out how we're going to do this right. And I've been really honored, and I haven't been to this convention since 2007. But that was when I first got my taste of fellowship with other sharpeners, making connections. So it's good really to see other familiar faces that's been here since 2007, since I've been coming to this event. So it's good to be back. And so that's a little bit about my background, how I got started. Up to date, I've been the sole warranty sharpener, factory warranty sharpener for Fromm International for 4.5 years now. So I'm the only person that services all their shears and clipper blades and cuticle nippers and tweezers that get sent to the main office, or the headquarters in North America, from North America headquarters in Mount Prospect, Illinois. So that's a big to-do, and it keeps me busy. So, and that's where the especially screw assemblies that I'll be talking about, really with, Fromm and Jaguar, because it was originally Jaguar was owned by Fromm. So I was doing all that. And those screw assemblies are really exclusive, and they can be very difficult or hard to deal with if you don't know what's going on. And that's kind of like my crash course in the difficult stuff, working with those assemblies. So I've been doing that for 4.5 years now. So without further ado, my main talking point also is I want to make sure you guys, especially new or old in this industry, can deal with these difficult screw assemblies and be able to handle them without any hesitation. Whether you're in salon sharpener or in a van sharpening environment, you'll feel comfortable handling them and telling your customer, yeah, I also do these as well. So they can feel confident in using your business for other things as well. And not just saying, oh, I only send them back to the factory. No, I can service these now. So since then, I've developed my own style of doing things. I'm not reinventing any wheels here, or sharpening wheels, maybe. But I do want people to get some added bonus information that may be of use and benefit to them while they're out there servicing shears. So today I'll be talking about the Fromm and Jaguar shears and the screw assemblies, how they all work, what's the best way to handle them so you're not lost out there. I'll also be talking about Hikari screw assemblies and how to handle those. It might be an $800, $1,200 Hikari. And it doesn't matter how good your sharpening is, and Bonnie touched upon this the other day, it doesn't matter how good your sharpening is, if your screw assemblies aren't working properly and you give that shear back to the customer, well, who's the last one that serviced it and touched it? They're not going to be looking at the last guy, they're going to look at you, because you're the last person that touched it. And so with that said, we need to know how to handle these screw assemblies and know what to expect if something does go wrong. If your client calls you back and says, hey, my Hikari is bending here, they're thinking it from a stylist standpoint, the shear is dulled out, what'd you do wrong to my shear? Or they've never done this before, what'd you do to my shear? You'll say, oh, they loosened up, let me come over there and, adjust it for you. Or if you, which is even a step further, is before you give that shear back to your stylist, you want to make sure you educate them on how to adjust that shear to proper tension. And for me, I always tell them that when I give them back or before I leave, that they all know what's going on. And if they forget, they either call me up or they go to my YouTube video, which I have set up for stylists to check just so they know visually how it's supposed to be adjusted. We're also going to be talking about the rough screw assemblies, of which I'll be giving a mock demonstration of a rust style shear because I couldn't get a hold of one. And those can be very cumbersome out in the field. I know I invented a little jig for it, or fixture, to field them easier, where you don't need a third hand to take them apart and reassemble them. Miscellaneous screw assemblies, your odds and ends, we'll work on that, and I'll pass things around too, kind of like a little show and tell. And then working with washers, washers can make or break your sharpening. Again, if you're missing a washer, if you don't have a properly fitted washer, or if something's upside down inside a screw assembly, that's going to ruin your sharpening. So all the education in the world is really going to focus back on how well you're able to readjust that shear, reassemble that shear, or if there's something missing, know that something's missing and know what you can do to fix it in the meantime, or order another part. So with Fromm and Jaguar, the first slide to the left, right here, we're dealing with a 7mm hex nut. And keep in mind, with most of these screw assemblies, anytime you see a brass screw assembly over a metal screw or a metal male screw, if you over tighten these screw assemblies, they're very fragile.
Is that it?
Yeah, we can pass that around.
Yeah, I'm going to pass this around.
And I'm going to pass around the actual tool that I use to take them apart. It makes your work a lot more proficient when you're using a tool like that. So I use a 7mm hex socket to take them apart and reassemble them. But just note that when you are dealing with them, all these screw assemblies with brass nuts, they're gonna you can strip them out or break them easily. If you don't thread them on there flush when you initially put them back together, you will strip them out, and what happens is you'll get microscopic filings, and the threading on the male post is fine as it is. So if you got microscopic filings on a fine, you'll never get it back on there properly. If you force it through, you're not going to just cross thread it, you're going to trash the whole screw assembly, period. And then you'll have to find a way to get more parts. And when you do field these in out in the field, and you do strip it out accidentally, just know that when you order a new part or a new screw assembly, order the whole thing. Because some of these screw assemblies, especially this hex nut, they don't even make it anymore. So they replaced it with the second slide, which is a flat offset screw assembly.
Yeah.
So here we have the replacement right next to it, so you guys can compare notes. And with that one, a lot of guys, because it's offset, a lot of guys over torque it, and they break off that lip. And if they break off that lip, yeah, they're going to have to eventually replace it, but they can't use the newest screw assembly on the old one, or vice versa, because the threadings are a little bit different than the old style shears on the male post of the screw assemblies. So they're not interchangeable. So even though you might have the same post in this 7mm hex nut, if you put that new screw assembly on there, because they don't make the old one anymore, it's not going to cross thread right because the threads are different. They're a different width. So just be safe, buy a whole new screw assembly, the male post and the new nut.
They usually come that way though when you get them.
And if they do, that's great.
Yeah, because we order and keep those in stock usually, and they come as the whole set.
I call it the Fromm key. And with that situation, for people who do end up breaking that top nut with the offset flathead screw, if they break it off, you can still take it apart. You can either use the real small vice grips, or I use this little guy to come up the top and grab it, and then I can tighten or loosen it from the outside lip on both sides. So that'll get you out of trouble. In the meantime, you can still adjust it using this or a little small vice grips, but just know that when you service it next time, you order that, let your client know what's going on. Hey, your screws will work fine. I broke the lip on your, it broke, and I'm going to order you a new screw assembly. And then let us know that's what it is. And so I'll pass this around. Wolf Industries was selling this at one time. They still may carry it. This is where I bought mine, was Wolf Industries.
That's a standard adjustable wrench that you can get it home.
Anywhere. Yeah, anywhere. And then on the far right slide, we're talking about tightening and loosening a spanner nut, which Jaguar calls a smart spin screw assembly with a spanner bit. And I know Dennis Brooks was talking about this earlier. It was a little black thing with two prongs, and that was it. Back in the day, that's what we used to take them apart. And now just pretty much what Dennis was talking about. I took my Dremel and made accurate cuts in here, so I was able to make my own and then slide it in and out of. So you're more professional and more fluid in front of your client. Especially for those are people who are working in front of their clients. You definitely want to be dropping things in front of them or looking like you're an amateur, because whether we know it or not, they are very, very in tune with what we're doing, and they are watching us. Even when we're our backs to them, they're constantly watching us, and also their clients. You know, so we want to be as proficient as possible. I know I do a lot of my servicing of all the factory stuff in my workshop, and then I have separate tools in machine for on the go when I'm servicing in the salon. So I just want to also stress this, you guys. I don't think it's been stressed. Always have doubles of your tools. There's nothing worse than if you had to field something at home and then you forgot a tool to bring with you, and you're 20 miles away. That way you're not doubling back, whether it's water stones, screw assemblies, screwdrivers, what have you. Always try to work on getting doubles of your tools. It's not going to break you, it's going to make you. And time is money, unfortunately, in our industry. So I want to stress that too. I don't think that was ever said today or the other day. So definitely have doubles of your tools. So here we have a basic screw assembly for more of your low-end style Fromm and Jaguar shears. They're just going to be a regular style flathead screw, but it goes into a plastic female threaded screw assembly that goes inside. It's countersunk, so it has to be pressed in. But the only caveat with this is if you cross thread it, it'll throw off the angulation of the blades and throw off the set and the tips, and sometimes one tip will be longer than others. So make sure when you put it on there, it's dead flush and straight when you put it in. Sometimes you'll come across situations where the backside will pop out, and then as you turn it, the backside turns, so you can't ever loosen or take apart a shear. And to prevent that being an issue, you want to make sure you do a little super glue on the back side, or the internal part that's going to be going inside the blade of the shear. So that way, if you do try and force it, it doesn't pop back out, and then you're back to square one with a shear that's totally off balance and just going to be a really problem to take apart. So
It's okay to super glue where it stays in the front of
yeah, just make sure it's a little bit, you know, because even when you replace a new one, there's no cross threads in there. You got to force the threading on there. You're creating, and it's not easy. You know, I've done it like once or twice, and I really try to salvage what's already on there and just, you know, work with what you got, because, you know, they're not high-end shears. You know, something like these, your basic beveled shears, they're probably 100, 150 bucks at best. So, you know, those screw assemblies are fragile, but if you do a little super glue, make sure it doesn't go through the backside. So always be aware, if it does come to the backside, use alcohol or my world famous H42 I like to use to kind of break up that anything that's dripping in the backside, so it's not in the hollow ground area and cause your shears to be super glued together if that happens. So just be mindful of that. And then when you do put it in there, it's squared off and it goes into a square part of the shear blade. And so make sure you line that up. When you do put a little super glue on the outside to press it in, that it's perfectly lined up, because sometimes it'll go in awkward and then you're in trouble. And then you gotta try and take it back out and then repress it back in. And to press it back in, you can use any like needle nose pliers. This one I use to press it in, and this one I use on the slide to press it back in. And then you're good to go. Once it's on there straight, you put the assembly back together, the shear should be fine. Alright, so here we have a Hikari style screw, and a lot of those screw assemblies, even though it might be an $800 or $1,200 shear, again, we give that back to our stylist, and that's a split screw on that. And that over time, because the Hikari shear is going to be used a lot, and it's a heavier shear than most other shears, that screw assembly takes a lot of beating and wear and tear. And because it's a split screw, it's going to close up on itself, and Dennis kind of touched upon this earlier on how he deals with those and opening them back up. It's a real easy fix. I kind of made it even more simplified than when years past, because in my jig that I developed, I also incorporated the foundation to open up a split screw on there. In the past, we'd have to put it down and then tap it, and then sometimes if we tapped it wrong and didn't hit it right, it would go flying across the room and you lost the screw, or you had to look for it. Then you're really looking clumsy in front of your customer, and they're like, okay, what's going on with my shear? I'm giving you $800 shear, now you're looking for the screw assembly. So to really combat that and look really professional in front of your client, Basically what I do with the split screw is I have a magnet attached to my assembly. And this is the split screw. And so no matter what I do, if I don't hit it properly to open it up, it's not going to fly, it's going to stay within the magnet. And I specifically had this recessed so if it does move around, it's not going to go flying off because it's kind of like in its own little protected little bowl there. And so I take my handy X-Acto knife and my small little watch hammer. These hammers are invaluable too, especially for setting shears and hammering. So with this is really simple. The magnet is holding it vertically in place. It's not going to wobble around at this point. I'm just going to line it up over the crease. And I'm just going to tap down. And generally in the past, I've only broken one of these tapping down too far, and it was on a nick shear. For whatever reason, the integrity of that steel was just messed up where it didn't want to be tapped and it just broke apart. But I do hundreds of these, and these never break. You know, they're designed to close, they're designed to open back up. And all we're going to do is open them back up. And so you can only, if you go halfway down, you're good. If you go all the way down, then it's a little too much stress for the screw assembly, and you don't need to go all the way down. But this will open it up perfectly to the right width when you hammer it down, and then you can either pull it off with your bare hands, or if you're not comfortable with it, just grab it with the pliers and pull it back off. So that's how I deal with the split screw, and I'll pass this around. So earlier, Dennis was talking in his demonstration. We were the inserts of a fitted washer. A lot of times we talked about them have to be sides down so they'll fit internally. So you just take the nail clippers and just hit the outside with it so it'll be properly fitted. Because the newer ones are larger for some reason. The ones that came from the factory initially with the shear, they already fit, but they're no good anymore if they're missing. Definitely. Just on the back side of the red plastic is and the inside is squared off. And so these are usually ones where you have to actually, when you're brand new, you got to force the threading on there with the initial screw.
Okay.
Yeah. So stuff like that, you know, basic velvet shears, those are between $100 and $150. Oh, also with the Hikari screw assemblies, when you have to open them up or if you don't have to open them, taking them apart and reassembling them, as opposed to using a flathead screwdriver, those are a wide-gapped flathead screw. And there's too much space in there and wiggle room, so if you're putting it back together, and I've been guilty of this, trying to put it back together, and it slipped out of the gap, and I've re-damaged the shear that I just sharpened. To prevent that from happening, I use this, and I talked about it at the last convention at National Beauty Tool last year, where I use a modified quarter to properly fit in there and be snug. Also with that quarter, let's say you're fielding a Fromm or Jaguar shear, all the finger rests or tangs have a slot, and that quarter fits snugly in the slot to tighten or loosen it as need be. So the quarter is multifunctional in how I utilize it, and for those of us who are on a budget, you can use a penny. So if you're a tightwad, I have a solution, you can use the penny. So you can put the penny in there and kind of play with it. So not only can you adjust this shear with the penny or the quarter, you can also adjust the finger rest. So multifunctional, you kind of have to think like MacGyver when you're out there in the field.
Can you tighten something so much that you just plain strip it out?
You can, but with your fingertips being so close, you'd have to be like Sasquatch to really torque it with that being that close to your.
All the
your
threads
screwdriver.
universal for the finger rest?
Yeah, for Fromm Jaguar, they're pretty much 90% plus the same style.
But not
Some are
from
long.
other companies.
Yes.
You know you're in a cheap room if you don't get your penny back.
Right, and this is one thing you can show your stylist who may have that $800 or $1,200 Hikari, or even shears like that. If they loosen up, they panic. Let them know, hey, look, if your shears loosen up, it's a breaking in period of your shears. As I service them, sometimes they'll break in, and they're going to wear and get to know each other once those blades start to mate. So then you're able to let them know, hey, if they loosen up, they're going to bend here. So this is what you do to fix it. Because most stylists aren't going to have a screwdriver in their tool, in their kit of brushes and combs. So just let them know, hey, you can just pull out a quarter or a penny. Just be nonchalant about it. Just do this, adjust it, show them proper tension. Now you're the consultant, and you're reassuring them if they have any issues. This is what they do. They can grab a quarter or a penny out of their purse. Boom, they're ready to go. So that just makes you look more professional too. Just by sharing that information, educating your customers on those type of little tricks as well. You learn them here, that you can pass it on to your customer. and it's a win-win for everybody. I'm going to do the rust demonstration, or the mock rust demonstration on the new rust style jig, universal jig. So we can go over here. In the past, dealing with a rust shear, and I wish I had this assembly years back, because in the past I would use literally 2 screwdrivers. I would use a spanner style screwdriver underneath, and then I put the shear like this. I put the shear like this, try and line it up, and I hold it like this, and I come to the top and then try and loosen it. Well, when you're doing this in front of your customer, because that's all I do is sharpen for my customers, it looks really cumbersome, awkward. It doesn't look like I'm in a whole lot of control of this shear as I'm doing it, and they've probably never seen anyone do this to their shear before, so it really kind of makes you look awkward. And then of course you can always slip too, and then re-damage your blade after you sharpen it, so that's another thing.
Explain to them what it is about that screw that you have
Yeah.
to use 2 different things.
Because if I turn this, the top side is the flathead screwdriver, and when you turn this, the opposing side is a spanner nut that moves with it. So you need something in there to keep it from moving, just to disassemble it and work on it. And so to combat that, I've come up with this jig to hold it at the bottom, keep it in place while I come up top side and disassemble it. And the best method for this style is, because this jig is interchangeable, I can take the regular bit or any other bit and put it right here in replace of it. You guys have flexibility to use it what's best for you and how it's your own style.
Why do you think they created it like that? What are they
Probably
doing?
to deter sharpeners or amateur people who don't know how to deal with it or don't have the tools to take it apart to mess with it, so that customer will be more inclined to send it back to the factory. Because a lot of people will be intimidated and say, you know what, I don't work on that style of shear. Well, if you tell your customer that, and you have tailored stylists that really need sharpening, they'll start to lose confidence in your abilities if you can't use a trick. And as much as you're doing them a favor by turning it down because you don't want to mess up their shear, they're going to lose confidence in your abilities, and that's something we don't want to project when we're in a salon. So we want to be able to handle everything, and having more than one tool also helps to make sure you have that tool in hand for that specific shear on that day. You may be getting something you never see out in the field. So with that said, to make this a little bit easier, you can put the spanner bit at the bottom, or what I find easier is just putting the flathead bit at the bottom first. It's easier to line up, and you just line it up like this, kind of wiggle, make sure it's in there, and then I can take the slotted or the spanner bit in my regular screwdriver. I can come up to the top, lock it in, and I can disassemble it. And so now I'm more stable in a more unstable environment. This is to my workbench when I'm working in front of my clients. And now, actually I can just go to the flathead. Once it's disengaged, I can go to the flathead and disassemble it. Makes your work a lot easier. And so when I disassemble this, I have the magnet here to, there you go.
I got it.
I have the magnet here to grab the screw assembly as I'm working on it, to hold it in place, to keep it from falling on the ground like I just did. So we just taken a rust style shear, and we can reassemble it.
That shear is also an example of why you shouldn't try to bend things, Shears.
Yeah, this was probably what, a cast shear,
Yeah,
and it just snapped on you.
and what me?
Yeah.
Somebody I told not to bend it did it.
School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
And so when we reassemble these, I usually keep my finger pressure over the backside, and then I use my fingernail as another tool, as another screwdriver. And I'll finger tighten this, make sure it's threaded on there securely until I can't turn it anymore. Once it's there, then I'll close the blade carefully, then I'll re-engage it in the fixture. Then I'll come with my spanner bit on top. So that's the demonstration. So we were able to open up a split screw on here without it flying across the room. We're able to disassemble and reassemble a Rust style shear using this platform as well. But the picture to the right is the external clicker plate assembly for a Paul Mitchell. It was probably a student shear. And the support plate underneath the clicker plate, you want to make sure that the cone is facing up.
Yep.
So it's open like this. If you reverse it like this and give it back to your customer, doesn't matter how sharp the shear is, it's going to bend the hair and they're going to freak out. That happened to me actually where I put it in the wrong way, gave it back. I was testing the edge on there, was sharp. I was scratching my head. I'm like, you know what, let me just take this apart and see what might
find
be
that
off.
on a bunch of the dog grooming shears.
Yeah, you'll see the same thing. And so just make sure that the cup is facing, the cone shape is facing up and the cup is kind of facing down, and then you won't have any issues with that particular screw assembly.
Josh, I even
Yes,
had a
Dan.
Centrix. I don't know if that's standard, but
Mhm.
that's the last Centrix shear that I sharpened. Had a upside down or a cone over the top click. I was like,
Yeah.
so, and it seemed very odd because I really didn't pay attention to it when I unscrewed it.
Yeah.
I was in a hurry.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, I went to put it back together, and I'm like, what in the world is this?
Yeah.
And then, just through process of elimination, figured it out.
You figured it out, right. And so it's always good, like Kathy said, take a picture of some of those weird things, so you can always kind of have your own little digital library in your phone at hand to revert back to if need be. And on the left, there's a picture of an internal clicker screw assembly. And Dennis we kind of shared that he told me about what he does to press in the actual plastic insert for the Fromm Jaguar shears. Well, you can also use that same tool, which I'll pass around. It's 7/30 seconds as far as the tubing, brass or copper tubing, even aluminum tubing at your local store. And what you do is a lot of times the female screw that goes in the backside that protrudes slightly through the hollow ground areas of the shear doesn't come up far enough to engage that internal clicker plate. So a little bit of being offset, it'll come back out again. And so when you're actually going to adjust the shear, it'll pop out and it'll kind of never want to engage. And you're wondering what's going on because it's not reseated properly in the inside of that male post underneath. And so to kind of make sure it's down there flush, go over the top and just push it down to make sure it's seated, and then make sure there's no play underneath before you put the rest of the screw assembly together. Yeah, so that's for the clicker plates. Those are the common things you'll deal with when they're internal clicker plates and external clicker plates. It's always good to make sure you know that the support washer underneath is facing the right way.
I'll send you the slideshow.
Anyone have any questions right now before I go into some of the miscellaneous
I have a question.
style?
I have a question.
Yes.
It's kind of an oddball question. Here goes. Is there anybody, or is it conducive at all to sharpen shears without taking them apart?
It depends on the quality of shear. If it's more like a barber style shear with no proper hone line, then you leave those together.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, even some of the grooming shears, we don't take them apart. There's no proper hollow grind on there for you to put it on a water stone. So those you don't take apart. So there's different methods for handling those as you start to learn to be
Just
trained.
the double edge shear.
Yeah, bevel edge style shears, German style bevel edge shears. Yes. With
Some, not all.
not all, yeah, some.
And how does one learn to be able to tell the difference? I mean,
That's what you learn in the classes.
Yeah,
When you come
you
to
learn how
training,
to,
you'll learn- and that's
hands-on
easy.
training will clear all that stuff up, definitely. And I know Robert talked about why screw assembly had 2 washers. There's a few reasons for 2 washers or even more. One would be that the screw is fatigued and you would need another washer to help support it to keep it from backing out. Number 2, it's a good indication of a low-end Pakistan-made shear or a low-quality shear that has poor screw assembly parts and poor workmanship in it. So to compensate that, they put extra washers in there to get it to feel smooth when they open and close it.
Can I just
Go ahead.
respectfully disagree?
Go
I know
for
when
it.
Casper was here, back then, all the USA Ikard shears had 2 washers in them.
Okay.
He thought that gave a little extra cushion and.
And then that's another reason too.
So that you can't automatically
It's not 100%
say, yeah.
correct, but that's a good indication. If it says Pakistan, you have 3 washers on there. That's a good indication. If it says the old area Icards, well, another reason why they again would put multiple washers in there is to make it open and close a lot smoother. And another reason is if you have a texturizer or a chunker where you have harsh collisions on the open enclosures on that shear, you'd want to put an extra washer to act as shock absorbers when your blades are crossing over each other and making contact with the teeth. So that's another good tactic to use, or
It's a good
technique to
tip.
use.
It's a good tip.
Yeah, to add multiple washers. Granted, they're fitted washers and not oversized or undersized. So I also want to kind of go on to another shear that Bonnie gave and kind of work through these a little bit. This right here, I think is your stacker shear.
Yes.
And I had never fielded one of these until she gave me this. the other
Right
night.
now, we don't have them in stock, we've discontinued them, but
Okay.
I've had some people ask for that shear, so that maybe one will be reintroduced in the next year, so.
Okay. So with that said, I was able to come up with a way to take it apart. This is, I don't even know what you'd call this, part of the screw assembly. But this is, we never see a shear like this out in the field. Way to take it apart now without, being awkward or feeling awkward at doing it in the salon. So what we do is we take a small flathead bit right here, and what happens is it'll engage the cavity in here without it moving. So we have it seated underneath, and then we took this spanner key with Harry's wand. I got this today, so I knew what I needed. I got Harry's wand with this little spanner UFO tool to come up with the top side.
And you have to have one with a little bit longer
Yeah,
prongs.
yeah, or longer legs or longer prongs. Yeah. Or you can go to the spanner nut, spanner bit. And disassemble it. I'm glad I'm not in a race. It's always different when you have 100 pairs of eyes watching you.
Oh, yeah,
Is
it's
that,
helpful, right?
is that really similar to like the rust?
No, not at all.
No, this is totally different.
This is
It's
not
It's
a
more like
heavy
a
one of a
UFO screw with,
Yeah, with the
where the two screws can fit together, so you can have the double shears, like the,
Oh, okay.
most of the double shears fit together at the handle, and this one they fit together at the screw.
Just know that this is a spanner bit up top. It has an internal clicker blade, but here's the back side, which we use the small flathead screwdriver to engage it to keep it from moving as we disassemble it. So this shear right here, at one point, this has probably been out for what, 10 years or plus. The story was that whoever bought this shear got a free bicycle. So I don't know how much the bike was or how much they paid for this. This shear is awkward, but it's easy to handle in the field. And we're going to go through it right now and disassemble it, reassemble it.
There's a couple of different manufacturers that
Yeah.
have that type of screw.
For those who are adventurous and don't mind cutting themselves, you can use some type of knife blade and kind of work it on the lip here and then pull it off. But for people like myself who
I've had a few of them.
who are prone to doing stuff like that, just take your vice grips or this little pliers right here, grab it, twist, and then pull it off.
It's capped.
Because it gets pressed, it's capped, it probably gets pressed in, it's not screwed.
Was it a neoprene?
No, it's just, it's a metal fitting.
Yeah,
It
it's
just
a metal-
fits down into
You can
the
just pass this
top of the
around.
cap.
It's not.
Under the cap, it's basically a flathead screw. And all I'm going to do here to make it simple is engage it, hold it, and just twist it like a regular screw.
That's a whole
And
different.
be careful because there's a lot of stuff underneath here.
Yeah.
So we're going to hold it upside down. And underneath you're going to have some type of internal clicker plate and washer underneath. And if you notice, this is a split screw assembly. Right now the split is even, so I know it's not fatigued, so we're still okay. And so just keep everything together like this. Just set it to the side, put it on your magnet, whatever you want to do. And then now you can properly work on this shear like a normal shear. So with that top cap, it doesn't get threaded on. You just press it on with either a pliers, but I don't recommend it because sometimes the teeth of the pliers will dent the rubber part of that actual cap. So what I usually do is I'll put it on here, finger press it, and then I'll take it on a hard part of the workbench and I'll just press down and press it back into place. And that way I know it's secure and it's not going to have any indentations from any tools I just use. The Z is facing upward, so we're going to put it back on there. The Z facing upward, so it looks aesthetically pleasing to the stylus. I'm finger tightening. You can go to your workbench or whatever. Come here, press down. It's in there securely. The next one we're going to be dealing with is a tribal shear. Similar concept. I think this one's a little easier to work with. Less screw parts, internal parts. So I'm just going to take this apart with my finger. And so we have this nice screw assembly with threads.
Is that the
Then
tribal?
internal, yes, it's a tribal, and then internal part, you have another flathead little insert there, where you just take your flathead screwdriver and you get the bigger one.
Does that one have that oval shape
No.
inside, or it's just a standard?
This is standard with a split screw in the back.
Okay.
So with this, I'm just going to put a wider gap flathead in there if it's snug, and we'll deal with that like this. Okay, so this is what you have. Nothing else involved. You got a split screw, and you got the washer.
Wash.
Real simple. A lot better design. So this one, if you see this in the field, you'll know you'll be able to handle them. Also for, regular flathead screws or screws that are backing out, I also use a little bit of removable blue Loctite on there. I let it kind of set for, I put it in there for maybe like 5-10 minutes, and then I'll just thread it back in to hold the screw and keep it from loosening. So I'll pass it.
One tip, I'm not sure if anybody's using it, but on the Loctite, I purchased the gel one. It doesn't drip that much,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all you gotta do is just like gel, just do a little bit,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't drip, nothing like that. And it goes right in there and it dries up quick,
Yeah.
just like the regular.
Those ball bearing ones, sometimes I've found that stylists, because they're always in a moisture environment, those ball bearing pivot screws sometimes will lock into place, and they're kind of difficult to get out. They rest in place,
Okay.
so and they fit usually very tight in that hole.
Yeah, you gotta
and
press them in.
and if you try to do it not carefully, you can offset that, and then you got a problem because you got a bearing that's now been pinched.
So even the best, what's considered the best ones aren't all done, don't solve all the problems.
No.
Well, I
But
had
then
a,
education with your shear or with your stylist too, because that's a great it's evidence that she or he is letting her shears have moisture that shouldn't be there. So and or that she's not oiling it.
Yeah, and then also with screw assemblies, a lot of the manufacturers, and I talked to one specifically, their thought is they want their customer to feel like they have a high-end shear, so the more awkward or tricked out the screw assembly is, the more they want their customer to feel like they have a higher-end shear, because this isn't a normal screw assembly, and then this is the type of shear that I have. So that's their mentality on their manufacturing side, even though it's not good from a service side to work with them. They're wanting to just protect their customer. This is why you're paying this much for the shear, because you have the really eclectic screw assembly, and that's why they do that. Not because they want to make it easy for us to work on them, because that's not what their target is. Their target is their client,
But
and
if
it's
you
a matter of
replace
perception.
a screw assembly, what's the most expensive screw assembly?
Ball bearing.
Ball bearing.
No, I mean, how much it would
That's what I'm
cost?
talking about. For me,
Yeah.
manufacturing shears, our most expensive screw assembly is the ball bearing.
Yeah.
And it's not necessary, it's the most
Is
expensive.
it a $2 part, a $15 part?
I stressed to the manufacturer at one point that, hey, it doesn't matter how elaborate you make the screw assembly is, if I'm trying to put it back together and it can't be serviced, or if that screw assembly is very fragile and weak, well, that $700 or $800 shear, they thought they got a really good high-end shear, can't be used. So what it is to your customer if it's not a very durable screw assembly? And I made that point, but one of those things. Moving along, we have a Yasaka shear. These are really nice shears, but they're a little awkward because the handles can be unscrewed and disassembled from the actual blade. And a lot of these shears, especially if they're 20 plus years old, this style has been since the late 70s, Yasaka, probably
Long
like
as that
70, 78, 1978 is when Yasaka came. This specific style has never changed since the 70s. And so to field this, The regular screw assembly is a regular small flathead, so that's not an issue. But what will be an issue for your customer is if the handle starts to loosen up and they have too much play in the blades. So what we want to make sure is that this is a small Phillips head, and all we're going to do is take a small Phillips screwdriver and tighten it up to make sure when we give it back to that client that none of the blades are loose. And some of these have been tightened so many times over the years they're stripped out. And that's just one of those things, if it's stripped out, then you just let them know it's time to buy another shear. Especially if you've been making money off it for 20, 30 years. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with the Osakas, to always make sure you double check and make sure these handles are tightened. So as you can see, we had a multitude of different screw assemblies all in one little live demonstration. They're not always going to be that easy, but you know, having specialty tools, jigs, things like that will definitely make your work stand out and keep you from having any real issues. Because us as sharpers, we just want to sharpen. We don't want to have to deal with screw assemblies and be all involved. Because we didn't make those screw assemblies, you know. So we're just dealing with the repercussions of, you know, how the company made it, and we want to make sure our customers are happy, that they know how to adjust their shears when we give them back to them, and then you have the right tool for the right job on any given day. So with that said, does anyone have any more questions or anything like that?
I just wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
on these type of shears, besides the Osakas, I've seen maybe some other cheap brand, I can't remember the name, but they're designed like that where the blade is actually either punched or screwed onto the handle like this. So I'm wondering on this one, I haven't done any sharpening on those, but you're still sharpening without separating the handle from the blade, right? I mean, just like you normally sharp the regular shears. You follow me?
Most of those that, I
Because
know what he's talking about, it's like the ones they get at Sally's that got the handle attached to the
Oh
blade,
yeah,
cheap
those you
ones.
can take apart and
Well, some are crickets, Eichard makes some.
yeah,
there's all
those you
kinds
can
of-
take apart and work on a water stone. Others you have to finesse them. And with my talk at National Media Tool, I kind of go into briefly how to field those type of shears when you're readjusting the hose line.
Right, but my question is, you still sharpen them together. You don't separate the handle from the blade, right?
No,
Because they
yeah,
come up.
everything is
seem-
together. You want to
Oh, okay.
yeah, just separate the blades, but don't take them. Don't try and disconnect them from the handle. They are welded in place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're welds.
And then you were saying on this particular type,
Yeah.
the first thing you do is pretty much check that the handle is tight.
Yes,
And
you want to
then-
make sure you check to make sure the handles are tight. Yeah, that's an easy fix.
Yeah,
One thing I didn't go over is with fielding washers and screw assemblies, like internal clicker plates, I use this bead hook. This thing is like a lifesaver. When I'm working with stuff and I need to grab something small, I can go in here in the screw assembly and grab, I can grab anything small, whether it's a small washer, I can grab it really easy, field it, have control over it, you know, put it down the magnet or whatever, and also help press in the washers and stuff like that with this as well. So if you don't have any of the tubing with like the seated washers for the Fromm Jaguar, I use this little bead hook to press them in once I get them lined up. And so these are definitely helpful when you're out in the field because they're an extension of your finger and it gets into small places. If you're dealing with small washers in little baggies, you can go in the baggie really easy, and that's a picture of a slot I had too. You can go inside the baggie, let's say there's a washer in here. I'll just put this back in here for the sake of the demo. So you got 100 washers in here or just one washer left in there. Instead of trying to just put 100 washers on the table, I can go over here with my bead hook. I can grab one washer
Oh.
and pull it out without having to dispense all my washers at one time. So this bead hook is really beneficial to have. You can get them at any craft store, not Sally's, Joann Fabrics, Hobby Lobbies, things like that. They'll have this little bead hook, and this is a lifesaver. So that was another thing that I wanted to mention. So also, if you're grabbing internal clicker plates inside, I grab them out with this, or you can slap them down, you know, like this. But usually, sometimes they'll be stubborn, so I just go in there and pull it out and grab it with the hook. One other little trick I want to mention, when you're reseating a washer, some people put a little drop of oil down the pivot area and then put the washer in there and then screw it in. The oil will kind of act as a vacuum and hold it back into place. Or you can use a little bead hook to push it down as well. And also when you're servicing a shear in the field, you can also do this to reseat a washer. You can wiggle it try and loosen it up, and then do your free fall test. And then you can also tap it to act as like your client's dropping it on the floor or throwing it in their workstation to make sure that that washer is not going to loosen up at this point. So we know at this point this is a perfectly balanced shear, and that washer is properly reseated. And then so those are some of the methods I use for reseating a washer outside of just the regular Fromm and Jaguar stuff.
Well, that drop test thing's fine for cutting human hair, but what about dog groomers? Do they want that same kind of?
Well, this isn't a universal test for dog grooming shears because the blade weighs more than the handle usually, because they're usually longer shears.
Yeah.
So you would basically come up with your own method. You want to basically feel a gradual light pressure as it closes back in on itself when you do a full closure. So if you know what real tension feels like on a smaller shear, just know you want to kind of duplicate that same feel on a longer shear. This is why I tell my stylist to kind of bring it home for them to make it more easy to remember. We hold the shear vertically at 12 o'clock. We take the finger rest side as a counterbalance or tang, because there's two different words for that, finger rest or tang. Take it up here at 3 o'clock and let it fall down. It's between 4 and 5 o'clock, you're on time. If it falls all the way closed, it's too loose. At 6 o'clock, you'll fold or bend the hair and hold all with your tips fast. If it barely falls between 3 and 4 o'clock, it's too tight, it could push the hair, and also it will dull your whole blade evenly. So those are things you should just go over with your client so they know what to expect if something does happen, or if they say, oh, I like my shears loose, and that's how I'm going to use them. You just let them know, okay, just so you know, you'll be seeing me about a month or two earlier because you're going to dull your tips. And if you're cool with that, then I just want to let you know I've said my piece, and I'll keep it moving. But at least you've given them an understanding, hey, look, I know what's going on, I know you like to use your shears this way, but if you continue to use it this way, you're going to mess up your tips, and also, eventually they'll mess out their set of the shear too, especially if they're doing a lot of point cutting or chipping and scooping. So some of those things you have to get to, let them know, and just be transparent, open with them, honest, and just, verbal communication goes a long way. So as far as reseating a washer, that's how I do it in the field. Education is everything, for us and for them. We just pass it on to them. So you can brag and say, I was just at a sharper's convention here, I learned something, I want to be able to articulate to you. Stylists take it seriously because they have to keep up their continued education every 2 years to go to their conventions. If we want to show the stylists or groomers the same respect and dedication and commitment, we'll do the same on our end to attend one-on-one trainings, group trainings, sharpers conventions to get this little bits of information piece by piece so we can better meet their needs out in the field. So that's my presentation. I, took the time to come out to this convention and you burned it. So, yeah, definitely.
All right, well, thank you.
Hey, Josh.